I knew that I wanted there to be a side of Patrick that we hadn't seen yet. I wanted there to be a skeleton in the closet. With a character that's so confident, it's so important, especially knowing what I wanted to end with in terms of their relationship. There were certain things that they had to go through as a couple first that could lay the groundwork for what became in the engagement episode in 13. And this felt like a way of addressing the ease with which I think his experience has sort of come into play. It was very supportive, obviously, and I felt there needed to be some kind of, we needed to see a little bit more struggle from him. So to reveal that he hadn't told his parents and that there was this secret that he'd been harboring.
I've been wanting to tell them about us. I really have. I just was waiting to do it in person, and then
I don't know why I assumed. So all this time, your parents thought they were just talking to your business partner.
Because he'd felt so safe in the town that he didn't feel the need to do that or address that or confront that with his family, and that, you know, he was going to be forced into that situation because David, who had been taking calls from his family and talking to them quite casually, thinking that they were thinking about him as a boyfriend and not a business partner, but never thinking that it could have been.
So he makes this assumption. The scene where, in particular, the scene where David and Patrick sit down and David is trying to explain basically what he's done and a little bit of what's happened, and the emotional, like the way you pivot from, I felt heartbroken for David that he's like, wait, you didn't tell them?
Right.
To then immediately having so much empathy for Patrick, who's like struggling so much to figure out how to do this. And then kind of back again when David's like willing to basically go back into the closet if necessary to get his boyfriend through this.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It was a big scene. It was a long scene. It was, I think, the longest scene we've ever shot. Again, I think there are moments where I feel like I owe it to my own experience, and I feel like I owe it to anyone who's had that kind of experience to really take the time to authenticate what that is and authenticate the impulses and the feelings and the fears. And I knew that I wanted the outcome to be positive because we don't have homophobia in our town. So it was about how do you tell a coming out story that had never been told before, and how do you end it in a way that is positive and supportive, and that the fears, the trepidation, the anxiety is only coming from someone's own sort of overthinking of the experience, which I had done myself. I mean, I think part of that came from me mining my own experience and knowing that my parents would be fine with me, but there's always the what ifs, and that was really compelling to play. And I think fortunately Noah's such a great actor and was able to handle that so beautifully. And you know, again, every decision that's made, it's a tricky scene to write because you want to keep the comedy alive, but you want to honor the weight of what the character's going through. And for my character, who walks into this with a fear that maybe the relationship that I thought I was having was not quite as complete as he had assumed, was met with the reality and the truth of the situation, which I think for David has the ability to destabilize him because he's been sort of lied to and because relationships have always been quite tricky, but to override his impulses of saying, like, my life is over and this is of course what's happening, and choose to be a pillar of support to this person instead of making it about him, I think worked in servicing the character of David and servicing the Patrick's sort of struggle. And yeah, it was again, I think for me it was you feel like people are coming to our show to laugh, but I also felt really compelled to tell this story and tell it as best I possibly could. And sometimes it's not going to be funny, and sometimes it's going to be quite serious, but I think in the end, you know, we tried to squeeze some laughs out of it as well.
Like, I laughed. I definitely cried then. I definitely cried at the proposal. Like, you got me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the proposal.
Sure.
So you've got this hike. you have like, in some ways, sort of like one of the most contentious scenes between the two of them that we've really seen for a while,
Yeah.
where they're bickering, they're annoyed,
was a
like
mistake.
genuinely annoyed with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
And yet the payoff, you know, they get to the top of this mountain,
Right.
is this proposal.
This just felt like the perfect place to ask you to marry me.
So
Yeah.
what about that were you surprised by in the process of making it? That
I knew
you
that I
really
didn't want it
thought
to be easy,
Yeah.
and I knew that I wanted Patrick to have made a mistake and to have gotten a little overexcited in the sort of romanticism of the act and chosen something that he sort of overestimated David's excitement, and then to get there and realize almost from the first scene that this was not going to be right, and to play the frustration of Patrick realizing slowly but surely that this is not going well, and that this sort of idyllic scenario that he had concocted in his mind was not going to play out how it wanted. That was really fun because you got to see Patrick really on edge, and the reason he's on edge is because he knows what's coming at the end of it. So for David, he's just being himself, but Patrick's being so uppity and
extra for Patrick, which is
Extra.
really not usually his thing.
And again, it's like you want people to earn the
Yeah.
good stuff. You want them to earn the goodness. And for Patrick to finally say, I don't want to do this anymore, and then to step on the stick, and which actually happened to me that year. Was taking my dog for a walk and stepped on a branch that went right through my shoe. It was fine. I'm fine. But it was a strange thing, and I thought, okay, everything goes to and then for David to be the one, again, to pick up the pieces and say, no, this is something you've done, and I'm sorry that I haven't been respectful to the process, let's get it done. And then for sort of David to be rewarded with what happens, I thought was a really nice turn and twist, because he was almost gonna fall apart, and you know, he
And yet David is like so genuinely surprised. It's like, right? I mean, it really
I
doesn't.
don't
It's
think
not the kind of like
it's-
halfway through you're like, wait, is this person about to propose to me? It's just like complete shock.
Yeah.
How did y'all choose what the engagement rings?
Yes, let's talk
I
about
knew
the
very,
ring.
very early on that I wanted them to. Once I knew that it was working with Noah, I knew that we were going to build towards an engagement. And as soon as the idea of engagement came in, I'm like, oh, it has to be 4 gold rings to replace his 4 silver rings, because they were such a part of who he is. And I also felt like it was a beautiful way and an easy way of showing just how well Patrick knows David.
How much attention he's paying.
Yeah, it was like a really easy, from a lazy writer standpoint, it was an easy way of adding like an extra sucker punch to the emotionality of that scene by saying like, oh, he really sees this person and knows what he wants, and is thoughtful and caring, and has taken the time to really know who this person is. And and then, you know, I get to, at the end of all of this, go home with one of those rings, which is fun.
Nice.